In these pages, I recount the stories of three people in particular who have lived this reality. One is an insurgent Taliban commander fighting against the Americans. Another, a powerful member of the US-backed Afghan government. And the third, a village housewife, or in the language of America's categories, our enemy, our ally, and a civilian. Part 1. Chapter 1. The Last Days of Vice and Virtue. Early in the morning on September 11, 2001, deep amid the jagged heights of the Hindu Kush, something terrible took place. When teenager Nur Ahmed arrived that day in Gayawa to buy firewood, he knew it immediately. There was no call to prayer. Almost every village in Afghanistan has a mosque, and normally you can hear the muezzin's tinny song just before dawn, signaling the start of a new day. But for the first time that he could remember, there was not a sound. The entire place seemed lifeless. He walked down a narrow goat trail toward low houses with enclosures of mud bricks, and saw that the gates of many of them had been left open. The smell of burning rubber hung in the air. Near a creek, something brown lying in the yellow grass caught his eye, and he stopped to look at it. It was a disfigured body, caked in dried blood. Nur Ahmed took a few steps back and ran to the mosque, but it was empty. He knocked on the door of a neighboring home. It too was empty. He tried another one. Empty. Then he came upon an old mud schoolhouse, its front gate ajar, and stopped to listen. Stepping inside, he walked through a long yard strewn with disassembled auto parts and empty motor oil canisters. Finally, when he pushed his way through the front door, he saw them huddled in the corner. Men and women, toddlers and teenagers, more than a dozen in total, clutching each other, crammed into a single room. "Everyone else is dead," one said. "If you don't get out of here, they'll kill you too." In wartime Afghanistan, secrets are slippery things. The Taliban had planned a surprise attack on Gayawa, but the villagers had known for days that the raid was coming, and those who could had hired cars or donkeys and moved their families down into the valley. But this had been a hard, dry, unhappy summer. Times were not good, and many villagers could not afford to leave, even though they knew what might await them. Of those who stayed, only the few hiding in the schoolhouse, where the Taliban soldiers never thought to look, escaped untouched. The rest met an unknown fate. Back then, Gayawa was near the epicenter of a brutal, grinding war between the government of Afghanistan, controlled by the Taliban, and a band of rebel warlords, known as the Northern Alliance. In their drive to crush the resistance, government troops waged a Sherman-esque campaign, burning down houses and schools, destroying lush grape fields that had for generations yielded raisins renowned throughout South Asia, and setting whole communities in flight. In the regions surrounding Gayawa, the Taliban enforced a blockade, allowing neither food nor supplies to enter. Those who attempted to breach the cordon were shot. America's war had yet to begin, but on that September 11th, Afghans had already been fighting for more than 2 decades. The troubles dated to 1979, when the Soviet Union invaded a largely peaceful country and ushered in a decade-long occupation that left it one of the most war-ravaged nations on Earth. The Russians withdrew in defeat in 1989, and in their wake, scores of anti-Soviet resistance groups turned their guns on each other, unleashing a civil war that killed tens of thousands more and reduced to rubble what little infrastructure the country still had. Rival gangs robbed travelers at gunpoint and plucked women and boys off the streets with impunity. In 1994, a fanatical band of religious students, the Taliban, emerged to sweep aside these warring factions and put an end to the civil war. On a fierce platform of law and order, they forcibly disarmed and disbanded many of the militias that had been terrorizing the populace, and brought nearly 90% of the country under their control. For the first time in more than a decade, peace took root in much of the land. Criminality and warlordism vanished, and the streets became safe from rape and abduction. In the process, however, the Taliban instituted a regime of draconian purity, the likes of which the world had never witnessed. Moral and spiritual decay